Good day and greetings to you wherever you are, and happy Earth Day. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the fourth day of the inaugural Travel Retail Sustainability Week event and the third and final session of the day, Purpose-Driven Consumption, Addressing Consumer Concerns. I'm Michael Barrett, Head of Events and Corporate Social Responsibility at TR Business, and I'm looking forward to hosting our penultimate TR Sustainability Week webinar alongside my colleague Luke Barris-Hill, Acting Managing Editor at TR Business. I want to start by thanking all the session sponsors, Arienta International, Beam Suntory, Brown Forman, Coty, Molton Brown, and Mondelez International. Luke's going to introduce the session in more detail in a few moments and ask our panelists to introduce themselves. If you missed any of the sessions so far this week or want to watch some of them again, you can, of course, view all of these on demand by just clicking on the session name on each day here on the event platform. We're almost at the end of the week now with this penultimate session and tomorrow's closing keynote session. But earlier today, in the previous session, I highlighted the NGOs and social enterprises we featured in this week's program, and I cannot stress enough the importance of supporting these organizations and others like them. They're doing amazing work, and as you'll discover when you watch that session on demand or talk to the participants, any partnership is a win-win for all parties, the planet in particular. They all have sustainability networking hubs on this event platform, so please do visit them, get in touch and find out more about how your company can get involved. The first session of the day today was the fourth sustainability pitch session. So congratulations to Beam Suntory and Guerlain for achieving the 4-star Travel Retail Sustainability Trailblazer status, and to Brown Forman and Join the Pipe for achieving the Travel Retail Sustainability Hero status. As we announced yesterday, given the immensely positive feedback we've received on this program, we're going to continue celebrating sustainable initiatives. The Sustainability Pitch program is going to remain open to any company wishing to submit a proposal to our resident panel of judges. A number of judges have already requested to be involved going forward, so we're delighted to launch this ongoing initiative already with such strong endorsement. We'll be announcing more details on how the Sustainability Pitch will operate on trbusiness.com very soon, so do stay tuned. As you'll have seen in the story on TR Business this morning about the closing keynote session, we're delighted to announce that Anson Bailey, Head of Consumer and Retail for Asia Pacific and Head of Technology, Media and Telecoms Hong Kong at KPMG, will be taking part in the closing keynote session, which is scheduled for tomorrow, Friday, the 23rd of April at 11:30 a.m. UK time. Anson wasn't able to make it for Monday's keynote, so he'll be sharing the latest KPMG insights on sustainability from both a consumer and investor perspective in a session entitled Living in a More Sustainable World tomorrow. So do tune in to that tomorrow morning. And finally, also reported in that story this morning, TR Business has partnered with earthday.org to bring the Earth Day live stream event to the global travel retail sector via our own sustainability event here. World Earth Day, each year on this day, the 22nd of April, is the event around which the Travel Retail Sustainability Week has been organized. So we look forward to bringing you the live feed of that event, which will commence immediately after this session ends at around 6 p.m. UK time. You just need to click on that session to watch the feed. As you'll have heard me say already this week, at the beginning of each session, Nigel Hardy and Janice Hook, TR Business owners and managing directors, decided to make a strong commitment to driving the industry sustainability agenda and make all aspects of this event, both the webinar program and the networking opportunities, totally free of charge to you all. They want to facilitate the knowledge sharing on these vital topics and ensure you all meet with the companies investing in sustainable solutions and continue the conversation on sustainability with both current and potential new partners. But that wouldn't be possible without the support of all those companies who supported this inaugural Travel Retail Sustainability Week. So our thanks to all of the companies who have made this event possible, and these are Altia, Arienta International, Beam Suntory, Brown Forman, Coty, Dufry, Fras, Guerlain, Join the Pipe, Chris Shop, Lego, L'Occitane en Provence, L'Oréal Travel Retail, Molton Brown, Mondelez International, Moroccan Oil, Nestle, Pure Essential, Ritter Sport, and Silent Pool Gin. Thanks to you all for your support. Before I hand over to Luke, just a few housekeeping notes. You can still visit all the partners' sustainability networking hubs this week and, of course, for the next few months, during which the event platform will remain open. There are a number of airports, retailers, brands, social enterprises, and NGOs with the hubs, and you can message them or schedule appointments with them, see their videos, and download their sustainability reports and news. You can also schedule appointments with each other through the Attendees tab in the top menu or the Schedule Appointment button on the My Event page. And if you have any questions about the event, please get in touch with us via our own virtual help desk hub. Just click on the Join Virtual Meeting button anytime between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. UK time, and you can chat with our colleague Helen Chater, who will answer any queries you may have, or leave us a message and we'll get back to you. We've had some great questions from the audience all week, so please do take this opportunity to question the speakers about the insights you're going to be hearing throughout this session. The QA button is on the right-hand side of your screen. And without any further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Luke, who will introduce this session and the panelists. Over to you, Luke.
Thanks very much, Michael. Greetings to all of you joining us or rejoining us for the 4th day of Travel Retail Sustainability Week. We're delighted to have you here, and it comes on a special occasion, Earth Day, of course, on the 22nd of April. I'm Luke Barris-Hill, as Michael mentioned, acting managing editor here at TR Business, and I'd also like to extend my thanks to our session sponsors, Arianta International, Beam Suntory, Brown Forman, Coty, Molton Brown, and Mondelez, and indeed to all our premium partners for their support in making Travel Retail Sustainability Week a reality. Without your support, this event wouldn't be possible. And I'd also like to, at this point, to pay a special thank you or tribute rather to all our sustainability pitch entrants this week, and congratulations to our latest set of Travel Retail Sustainability heroes and trailblazers for the session today: Beam Suntory, Brown Forman, Guerlain, and Join the Pipe. Well done to you all. So what a week it's been. We've received a frankly overwhelming response to this programme, created to offer travel retail and the wider travel retail and travel tourism ecosystem a veritable platform to share expertise, showcase best-in-class sustainability practices, and crucially strengthen ties as an industry between stakeholders and suppliers of sustainable solutions. Now, as we've witnessed all week, the programme has served as a fundamental springboard to drive meaningful discussion, ultimately with the purpose of delivering positive action and change for people, businesses, and the planet. Like all new platforms, Travel Retail Sustainability Week started off as a simple idea, but has evolved into a galvanising force really for good. And with that in mind, and as announced earlier by my colleagues, we've taken the decision to bring back Travel Retail Sustainability Week for a second edition in 2022, taking place the week beginning Monday, the 18th of April, running through to Friday, the 22nd of April, to coincide with Earth Day. That's a strong affirmation of our commitment to the sustainability agenda, but more importantly, giving you all the chance to have that important share of voice that justifies the work and investments that you continue to make towards going green. Now, across all our sessions this week, what has resonated clearly is the commitment towards hitting specific sustainable goals, be it through different companies, with specific timelines, be them short, medium, or long term. That could be from responsible ingredient sourcing, recycling or replacing single-use plastics, cutting carbon footprints, or investing in supply chains and personnel. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to sustainability, as we've heard, and it's more than about just gestures. It encompasses a much broader philosophy. But whatever trajectory we as individuals and businesses choose to take, there is a common sense of purpose. I think that will play out in this session too. So very appropriately, we're now going to move into this session, purpose-driven consumption, as Michael mentioned, and that echoes very much an underlying narrative this week, and will continue into tomorrow's closing keynote, addressing consumer concerns. The greenwashing era is over, or is it? How are brands, retailers, and others responding to what are clearly heightened demands for sustainable products and services and the potential concerns around them? What are the challenges to capturing increased spending from eco-savvy consumers? Is travel retail doing enough to convey its core environmental aims beyond the boardroom? To tackle these and other questions, we're going to hear from 4 panelists today with a rich vein of experience across different verticals. So before I move to the introductions, or rather get each of the speakers to introduce themselves, I want to remind, as Michael has done, to you all to use this platform to interact, to question, to debate, make suggestions. You can do this using the Q&A function in the pane to the right hand of your screens. And in addition, we've also created, and I think it's worth reiterating this, a dedicated sustainability section on our website, trbusiness.com, to keep this conversation going around sustainability. So please do reach out to our editorial team here. We'd be delighted to speak to you about some of those initiatives. So without further ado, I'd now like to begin giving the platform to each of our panelists today to provide a short introduction before we move into the session. So to begin, I'd like to hand over to Peter. Peter, can you just introduce yourself for those who are unfamiliar, and your company? Peter, would you like to unmute yourself?
Hi, I'm Peter Mohn. I'm the owner and CEO of Mindset. We are a marketing intelligence agency, and we're specialized in travel research. And we work for around 100 companies in the travel area, most of them in travel retail, which is our key area of competence. And we were founded around 15 years ago. And as we all know, this is definitely the hardest year of all. And but anyway, we are thanking Pure Business for this initiative. And I was also part of the one of the judges of the pitch, and learned a lot this week. So thank you, and looking forward to the last 2 sessions.
Thanks very much, Peter. Jo, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Luke. My name's Jo Hendrickx. I'm the founder of Travel Without Plastic. We primarily work with accommodation providers, tour operators, excursion providers in different parts of the world, to help them look at strategic and operational plans to reduce single-use plastic from operations. So I don't have expertise particularly in airports, although I've spent many hours traveling through them. So I'm going to bring today, I think, just insight from travelers that we've spoken to over the years and our own personal experience to look at how we can make it easier for travellers to actually be able to move through transitory airports and other means of transport without having to rely quite so much on single-use plastics. That's what I hope to share with you today.
Thanks, Jo. We're keen very much to hear that insight and experience. Beatrice, can we move to yourself?
Hello, my name is Beatrice Descorps. I've worked in the beauty industry for the past 20 years in global brand marketing across L'Oréal, Coty, and now I am in the leadership team of the Molton Brown team, responsible for brand and marketing.
Thanks, Beatrice. And last but by no means least, Jessica.
Hi, thank you. Jessica Bowman. I serve as Executive Director of the Plant-Based Products Council. So it's a US-based trade association that's just over 2 years old, and we're focused on advocating for more of a shift to a circular bioeconomy that is based in part on broader adoption of products and materials made out of renewable plant-based inputs. And I guess also mentioning from a sort of a more personal professional background, I also worked at ACI North America in the late 2000s for a few years, managing their environmental issues, so have a little bit of a history with the industry.
Thanks very much, Jessica. So to begin, at this point, I'd like to pass over to Peter. Peter's going to present some exclusive findings from a research study conducted by Mindset on consumer approach to sustainability. So I will pass the floor, or the platform rather, to you, Peter. Peter, would you like to unmute yourself?
Thank you, Luke. as you mentioned, we conducted this research exclusively for this special event. And we actually conducted 2,000 interviews with travelers around the world to be able to understand how the travelers think about sustainability and their opinions and their fears. So I have a few charts I would like to share with you. Overall, as you probably learned throughout the week when listening to different webinars from this Sustainability Week, you can see that the awareness has increased and the brands and the companies are investing more and more. But we, as a market research company, we of course talk to the actual travelers. So when we talk to these 2,000 travelers around the world, we ask them, has the COVID-19 have any impact on your daily purchasing habits? And actually around 1/3 of the people we talked to said yes, they are more into sustainability, they are more interested in the subject, they try to shop more local products or environmental friendly products, which we find extremely interesting to hear and very, very good news. And if we look at the different demographics, I'll show you some interesting differences between the genders and regions. But first of all, I would like to say, especially those people who are really eager to travel immediately again after the bans and the quarantines are lifted, those are the ones who even are more interested in purchasing more sustainable environmental products. But also the Chinese show a higher interest in this, and it says it has impacted their daily behavior, as well as business travel and older millennials. And then we asked them about what are the different aspects of sustainability in your shopping experience. So what kind of aspect do you really care about, and what is the most important? And I want to tell you a little bit more about the top 3 ones. And the number one, 55% said actually naturally sourced and health conscious products is actually the most important, is more important than pre-COVID, and I pay more attention to that. And that's especially among the older millennials and the frequent travelers and the business travelers, to say so. And interestingly, when we look a little bit deeper into which categories it's specifically relevant for you, they mentioned hair care and fine food the most often. This is where the areas where they are looking more into finding naturally sourced and products that really are very into finding sustainable, interesting products. So that was really the most important aspect. Then followed by the packaging. So the sustainability of the packaging was mentioned by almost half of the people. And again, here you can see the frequent travelers, the business travelers, and the ones with higher income are the ones who pay most attention to this. And if you look at different categories, so the skincare and hair care categories was actually the ones that they will pay most attention to it. But also those who shop in fashion in the watches category give a very high importance to this aspect. And then third but not least, the sustainability of the products themselves is also mentioned by almost half of the travelers. And again, those who travel a lot and travel for business, they pay a lot of attention to this and really would like to see. These are the top 3 aspects that they're mentioning that they pay highly attention to. Then what's of course very important, so we really wanted to understand what is the actual impact of sustainability on the brand perception, and then of course, does it also influence the likelihood to purchase a product? And of all the numbers I'm going to show you, this is the number that surprised me the most when I saw the results, that 86% of the duty-free shoppers said that greater focus on sustainability by manufacturers definitely will have a positive impact on how they personally perceive a brand. So when they go into the shop or they see advertising or they read about it and they see that brands really have a real interest and really commitment to sustainability, it will have a strong impact. And this is something, a number that I've never seen before regarding this subject, because usually it used to be more around 40–50%, but now this has really increased a lot. So I think this is very, very good news for all of us. And again, the millennials and the females are the ones who are the most influenced by this, and also from people coming from the Americas, both North and South America. Well, business-wise, it's of course very important to understand, will they also be more likely to purchase a product if a brand is engaged? And actually 3 out of 4 said yes, it will have an impact on their purchase behavior. and we're more likely that we buy products that is having some sustainable efforts regarding the packaging, regarding the ethical aspects, all kind of issues that's related to sustainability will have a positive impact on the actual purchase behavior. And also, this is a number that is much higher compared to what I've seen before. And then we asked them, well, in reality, when you walk through the shop and when you look around and look at the products, do you actually actively look for more sustainable and environmental friendly products when you shop at the airports? And actually, a little bit more than half said yes, I will actually look for it. And I've seen, we also heard in our interviews that people said, well, we actually been seeing more and more brands and products and also airports for them doing more activities and being active in meeting this need that I have. So they have actually noticed a positive trend in general, especially these after this pandemic that we have, they will be looking more for these kind of products when they go shopping. And we see this especially again for millennials and females who are ahead of the game. They're much more likely to be looking for this kind of products. And if you look into the actual categories, you can see the beauty categories, skincare, hair care, makeup are the ones that will be the most relevant. But also in confectionery, there with the cocoa plantations, with the packaging, and also with the will be very relevant. And also in the fashion category, you can see it's a lot. Surprisingly, it was also among the top 5 categories mentioned where people will look for environmental friendly and sustainable products. Well, we also wanted to understand, or those who said they will actually not look actively for more sustainable and environmental friendly products. And we were asking, wondering why. What is the reason behind that you will not look for it? Well, this is, I think, kind of interesting. And the most frequent answer was, I don't really know how to distinguish sustainable products in the assortment. So this means it's actually quite an opportunity to communicate more clearly for any brand, for any company that's doing anything positive in this area, to try to communicate very clearly and simply, because quite many people are not able to distinguish between what's actually done, what kind of benefits will this do to our planet. A quarter of the people said, well, I actually don't have time available when I travel at airports. I'm usually in a rush. So that's a difficult thing to beat, to tackle. But then 19% said, I don't really have a trust in the sustainable label. And I think some brands might use this, although they're not really sustainable. So regarding the people really trust this, it's something questionable, but I think we're all working on improving this possible barrier. And we had, fortunately, a relatively small group who said, well, we are not interested in sustainable products, but I think that's reality, that's life. There will always be a group who don't care. And 11% said that actually the choice of sustainable products is not broad enough at airports, so I would like to see more of that. But again, I think the most interesting part is number one, that people are not really able to find information. So whatever you can do as a brand to improve this will definitely have an impact on the bottom line. Well, as we all know, all of you who actually have been active in the sustainability area, we know that sustainability comes at a price. You have to have a fair payment for the people involved, for the farmers, for the whole trade. You have to pay more for the artisanal farming techniques. You have to pay more for the packaging. So the costs are obviously higher normally. But the question is, are the travelers who shop in travel retail willing to pay more? Well, the good news is that 2 out of 3 said, yes, I would be willing to pay more for a product if it's environmentally friendly. And you can see that a little bit less than 30% said, well, they would be willing to pay 10% more, whereas 45% said, I will be willing to pay up to 20% more out of those who are willing to pay more. So I think that's quite a big chunk of people, so almost half are willing to pay 20% more, which I think is quite impressive. And then you have a small group of around 25, 26% who say, well, actually, I would be willing to pay more than 20% more, so up to 30 or 40% more. But I think around 20% more is kind of an interesting threshold that we should keep in mind. And also, again, here, the women were more likely to pay more than men. Then we asked about a few concrete examples like that are very relevant and people use every day when they travel through airports. We wanted to know a little bit more about their preference for the optional shopping bags when buying at the airports. And the number one preference was clearly to pay for a reusable non-plastic bag. That is something that some airports have already introduced lately and getting more and more. That is clearly something that 3 out of 4 of the shoppers would be willing to pay for. And but quite many people said, well, if it's not available, I would just continue using the airport shop bags without paying anything extra. Or every fifth person would say, I would pay for a reusable plastic bag. And even 15% said, well, they would actually prefer to bring their own reusable shopping bag or stuff it in their carry-on so that they wouldn't need an extra bag at all. But again, clearly, 3 out of 4 would be willing to pay for a reusable non-plastic bag, which I think is a nice commitment, which actually goes well in line that people are willing to pay a bit more. Then we also wanted to understand a little bit more about the preference for water consumption. It seems to be a very simple example, but we really want to know because that's what almost everybody does at the airport. They drink water in their transit, or before a flight or after a flight. So we really wanted to understand a little bit more what are the preferences there, what are the options that the travelers really would like you to use. And number one is actually to refill a bottle for free with tap water at a water fountain. That's something that 8 out of 10 would do. But also 7 out of 10 actually say that they would purchase highly filtered mineralized water from a dispenser in a refillable bottle. And again, this is mainly millennials and females who would be interested in doing this. And if you look at the different regions, here Europe was on top of the list. And number 3 was to purchase water in a single-use plastic bottle. So you can see that this was especially high in Latin America and Middle East and Africa. As some of you might have read at some point, you know that we have around the equivalent of 1 truckload of plastic enters the ocean every minute. So I've been talking around 10 minutes. So we have meanwhile had 10 truckloads of plastic entering the oceans of the world during my speech in 10 minutes. And if we don't change our behavior regarding plastic, it will be 2 truckloads per minute in 2030. So 9 years from now, which is a very, very scary thought. And so we hope that we can reduce this amount of people who actually purchase water in a single-use plastic bottle and have a little awareness of this will reduce even further in the near future. Then I would like to show you a rating of the most important concerns about sustainable consumption. So we had a list of aspects, and we want to know what are really the most important ones for you. And you can see the more purple you see, the more relevant it is. And you can see that they're extremely important or somewhat important. And if you add those 2 bars, you can see on the right side, the top 2 boxes. So which means that 74%, or 3 out of 4 actually saying that buying products at a sustainable source, respecting the environment, is actually a very, very big concern and important for me when I purchase. And then closely followed by buying products that are ethically sourced, respecting the social welfare of workers, farmers, and other people involved in source markets are taken care of. And then you have a little gap, and then also to buy recyclable products is on top of the mind. Still 2 out of 3 mention this as something very important. But then also to buy products that use as little plastic packaging as possible. So whenever you can reduce plastic packaging, it will be appreciated. And just as an example, we've seen some confectionery companies, but also in other categories, are really been working hard on trying to reduce the plastic packaging. And as you can see, the big share of consumers really do care about it and pay attention to it. So it's absolutely worth it regarding the perception of your brand. And last but not least, the buying recycled products will also be one of the top priorities for the traveler. Well, we especially those who are attending these webinars this week, and we in the business, we know quite much, and we understand how things work with recyclable packaging and bags. But we wanted to understand, do the people really understand what it means? So we asked them, do you agree or disagree with this statement? I have a full understanding of which packaging and bags are recyclable, biodegradable, and compostable. And we asked, do you really understand what that means, what it includes? And actually, 62% said, well, we have some kind of understanding. And only about a quarter of the people said, I have a complete understanding of this information and how it works. And 15% actually said, well, I don't have any understanding at all. So again, here it shows that we have a lot of opportunity to educate and to inform better about what we do and how recycling and how usable packaging and bags work, and what you as a company contribute to this. So this was just a quick overview of the most important findings we found in this exclusive research. And so that's all from my side, and I hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for those riveting insights. Really, really interesting. I want to begin actually by asking our panelists to react to some of those findings. If anyone's got any particular observations, I've certainly got some questions for Peter, but does anyone have any burning questions to put to Peter first and foremost, or any observations? Joe, perhaps?
I think part of my presentation will look at what people say they want to do and then what they actually do when they're faced with maybe the stress of getting through an airport. So I don't want to preempt, because I'm hopefully going to cover that in the 10 minutes that we've got to do. But I think that's something I find quite interesting. It's really great to see that so many people are want to make these changes. They want to see these changes happen, and I love that, and I think it's fantastic. But it's, how do we make it easy for them to choose that sustainable option every time, especially when airports can be quite stressful? And from the anecdotal research that we've done, which is mainly just talking to people, so certainly not in the way that Peter has conducted his, but it's when people say, I really wanted to be able to do this, but I ran out of time, or I couldn't find, very similar, I couldn't find what I wanted, and so I've had to do this option instead, and it's usually the less sustainable option. So I think, yeah, how do we make it easy? And hopefully I'll cover a little bit of that in terms of what we think people might be able to do. So I'll save that for the presentation. Thanks,
Joe. We'll come to you shortly. Peter, communication, it needs to improve by the looks of it. Obviously, the statistic there, 86% of travel retail duty-free shoppers think that there should be a greater focus on sustainability from manufacturers, and in turn that would have a positive impact on the perception of brands. But only 54, just over half, would actively look for more sustainable, more environmentally friendly products. How do we increase that gap effectively between the number of people that would be prepared to browse and purchase, and actually the perceptions that they have of manufacturers to invest in these solutions?
I think it would be very important to actually share what you do. It could be with, for example, on the screen to show some videos of examples. Like I just mentioned earlier, I had the honor to be one of the judges of this the pitch that we were offering, and so I saw many videos, and I was so fascinated by it, and I really learned things that I didn't really know was possible. And even small brands and huge companies have a very creative and ideas. So just by watching these short videos in a few minutes, really was very triggering and motivating. And sorry if I just take one more minute of your time, but I was watching these videos, and my two daughters, they are 12 years old. They also started looking over my shoulder, and then they wanted to watch all the videos with me. And they were so fascinated by that. After after I looked at all of them, they actually decided to make their own videos, and they started to create like a bag, something environmental friendly, sustainable, and they made a whole story themselves, and then shared it with their friends. And then they had like a competition who does the best. So I think we're like 15 kids making videos of making sustainable products. And so that was great. Just by communicating it, by showing examples, it's very simple, but it's motivating, and it works, because it's really, really scary what's going on and what has to be done. And these videos have been so positive. Like, it's to do it in a very positive way. It's motivating, stimulating. I think that can fascinate people and motivate them more to start looking for products that are engaged.
Well, as we said, Peter, the sustainability pitch program is going to continue. So I think we're going to launch a kids version of it as well, and you can get all your kids, the daughters and their friends, to submit their sustainability pitch videos, just like the Foundation for Environmental Education does with the young reporters that they talked about yesterday. So food for thought there. Luke, it would be interesting to put that question to Beatrice. She was nodding her head there when Peter was commenting, and to get Molton Brown's perspective on what Peter's been saying.
Please, Beatrice, if you have some commentary on Peter's finding.
Yeah, I think what is quite obvious from what you've been sharing, Peter, is really consumers are ready, they are craving for sustainable solutions. And I think it's a huge opportunity for brands to bring them this value, but to bring them the products which will make it super intuitive, super convenient, and super clear. So it's a huge opportunity, and it is a big challenge for the brands to bring that to the consumer. But what matters and what is positive is that consumers crave that. That's what they want. So we see this as a big opportunity.
Jessica, would you like to add anything at this point on Peter's findings?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting, and I think it kind of confirms some of what I'll be sharing in my slides, and really the importance of education and transparency. And I think to the point of people don't know a lot of things, even though sometimes they think they understand some of these issues, and how do we help them understand better, trying to avoid the greenwashing that we hear about so much. So I'll be touching on, I think, some points that will reiterate some of what Peter talked about.
Okay. Well, without further ado, at this point, it's probably worth handing over to Jo to share some of her findings. And of course, we'll come back to Peter's research throughout this session. So Jo, the platform is yours.
Excellent, thank you. I'll just share the screen, bear with me. Okay, let me know. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, we can see. Yeah.
Excellent. Fantastic. Okay. So I did a very quick introduction before, but just to set the scene, we've worked with, on plastic reduction in hotels primarily since back in 2011, before it really had the focus that it's got today. But Travel Without Plastic itself wasn't founded until 2017. Which is there when we took it into a much deeper level and started to work with hotel chains and tour operators globally. And we really want to look for a practical approach to solutions so that we also reduce consumption of unnecessary single-use products, so not just single-use plastic. And we want to be sure that we're not causing other issues. They don't negatively impact customer experience. They don't negatively impact on health and safety, for instance. So we very much follow the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative, which is to put processes over products. And that's a lot easier to do, to be honest, in hotels in a static situation than it is to do across the whole spectrum of the customer journey, particularly in travel. But what fascinates us really is why do people make these unsustainable choices in the first place, particularly when we hear statistics that say people want to do things differently. And I really like this way of framing the problem that I read in a report recently, which was about tackling plastic litter from coffee cups in particular, but through like a nudging behaviour. And I think in an airport setting, we can probably say that all three of these issues on the screen are relevant. But going on personal experience that we've had and general conversations with people that travel over the last couple of years, I'd say it's probably number 1 and 2 really where we find the most challenges and where I want to concentrate today. So I find, for me, it helps me if I put myself in the shoes of the customer when I try to think about solutions to reducing waste through travel. And I'm not sure, if I'm being perfectly honest, certainly not my own family, that I've ever seen families laughing and smiling at this point, the security control. And you have to think about the planning that's gone already to getting them to this point, and at which point in that plan did they maybe think about packing reusable bags or reusable water bottles and coffee cups and those sorts of things, but also considering that the airport, the experience of it can be compounded by unexpected setbacks, such as what you've probably just had to throw into the liquids bin, even though the liquids rule has been enforced since 2006. But I think the stress of these situations create the fact that some of the decisions that we make aren't necessarily rational. And then if this happens to you, you've got to get through the airport, then you're trying to find something to replace what you've had to throw away, or there are queues everywhere, you can't sit down together, you add COVID restrictions into this mix now, and it's quite easy to see why people just want to take the easiest option at this point. And 9 times out of 10, like we said, we find that that's not really the most sustainable, particularly in waste reduction terms. And we've also found, when we speak to business travellers, they're not immune to this either. They just travel differently, often get to the airport with just enough time to go through the motions of getting on the flight, or there may be a delay between quite short layovers in between connecting flights, and then there's a mad dash from one end of the airport to the other because the connection is never close by. So if you had the idea of refilling a water bottle or sitting down with a coffee, that suddenly doesn't happen anymore. So there's just so many things, I think, that can happen and that can get in the way of us trying to make the more sustainable choice. So even for those people that say they're knowledgeable, or they've got this emotional attachment or a motivation to consider the environment, like so many of us have got, I think that even we are, there's a potential for us to cave under some of those scenarios. So I think, like I said just earlier, wanting to change and then actually being able to change can be two quite really different things. And so many of the hotels that we work with tell us that they're guessing the same thing. They want to see a reduction in plastic, in single-use plastic, but then the hotel gets complaints because sometimes there's such a level of effort required on the part of the customer, or they perceive there's going to be a negative impact to their experience, for instance. And so then the intention doesn't necessarily follow through into the action. So I think really the challenge for businesses is to make the sustainable option the easiest option, the most convenient and the most attractive option to travellers, but whilst keeping it practical for staff and obviously ensuring it makes business sense. So it's obviously no mean feat, there's a lot to achieve there. But I think, as you've just said, Luke, it really comes down to good communications and promoting the benefits to the consumer. And that's when we see that it really starts to work. And I don't have statistics from airports in terms of consumption, but from our experience, the hotels that we work with, bottled water is really the #1 contributor to plastic waste. But there are so many opportunities to change this. And you do see a lot more people now around airports with reusable bottles, but not all airports make it very easy to refill. I mean, I once spent 20 minutes in Palma Airport in Mallorca trying to find the water dispenser. And not one person, not even the guy on the information desk, could tell me where it was. Whereas if you go to Bangkok, they're like everywhere. They're really easy to find. So I think that's one area where we could really make improvements. And for customers, I think it makes sense to want to refill. And it's great to see those stats that Peter shared. It makes great business and financial sense to them. And I think we're going to get to a time for businesses where using income to justify the sales of bottled water is going to become, somewhat unacceptable. And we're certainly not suggesting in any way that eliminating bottled water is the answer, but I think we need to take responsibility to make it easier to refill. So even if that means putting information about where to find refill dispensers more prominently, perhaps actually even next to the water bottle display, which may sound a bit controversial, but you're giving people the choice then. You can make it, for them that have got time, they might decide, I will go and refill the water instead, and I won't buy the plastic bottle, because you've made it easy for them to see where they can do that. And I think that helps to just encourage that behaviour change. Maybe you even have a refill dispenser in the shop and sell refillable bottles. And then again, to use that opportunity in food and beverage outlets and maybe offer free water refills as part of an incentive, to purchase something else, a hot drinks combo or a meal deal, which in themselves will generate packaging associated with that. But I think if we start to make refill acceptable, and we can start with water, then it paves the way for a lot of other opportunities. And then I think there's a lot of other quick wins. I found the bag information there quite interesting. We could simply ask people, do they need another bag when they're buying something that doesn't require an obligatory bag, like alcohol, for instance. When I've bought clothes in airports in the past, I've just opened my hand luggage and I've put them straight in, but to the point where every single time I've done that, the cashier has stopped me and tried to give me a bag, like really tried to give me a bag, and I've had to say no. So I think if we can start to make those changes and generate a new approach and a new expectation, and if we did that consistently, so we imagine all the outlets, for instance, in an airport had the same message about reducing single-use bags, not just plastic bags, single-use bags near to the till, everybody starts to get that message. Other ideas, of course, that we've seen, people buy a can of soft drink that you can easily take away, but automatically a plastic glass goes on top of that. That could be something that's just on request. And, often it's difficult in the beginning to get change to take place, but, it's always the case when we make changes that some people will complain, some people won't like it, but we get used to it pretty quickly. And I think that's one thing that COVID has shown us, it's that we're quite capable of accepting changes quickly. And I think what we need to do now is really capitalize on that, so that it's the sustainable changes that become the norm. And then the other thing that we found that links in again to some of the findings that Peter's shown us there is that solutions that solve problems are particularly attractive. So specifically when people don't have time, and there's a range of methods discussed in the coffee cup report. I'll show some images where you can find that in a minute. But they suggest a range of different options to being able to serve coffee. And bearing in mind that a lot of these chains have got high street stores as well. So you can start some of that awareness raising and some of that communication way before somebody travels. If you've got something in the store that says we can help you to travel smarter and reduce waste when you travel, visit our coffee shop. And if you're an independent chain, that only operates in airports, but the bigger chains are doing that pre-travel communication. What's important for you is people travel with their own refillable cup in the first place. So things like, a dedicated line for people with a refillable cup. It's just like a priority check-in queue or a priority boarding queue, things that kind of make sense in an airport, but also helping people to find where those food and beverage outlets are, because gosh, I've queued for ages to get a coffee. I've got the coffee. I'm trying to balance that with a suitcase and a coat and a bag with a sandwich in it. And I get to the boarding gate, and right there's a totally empty cafe where I could have actually sat down, taken the coffee in peace in a ceramic cup, the sandwich on a plate, created no waste. But I didn't know that opportunity was going to be available to me so close to the boarding gate. So helping people to do things like that. And then maybe as well looking at solutions to avoid the 100 ml rule by retailing shampoo, conditioner, shower, bars, cubes, powders, those sorts of things. I only ever go through security now with an inhaler and a mascara, which is actually really quite liberating. And I think if people know that they can consistently buy those types of products in airports, then maybe the first time they come with their own stuff in small bottles, next time they know that it's there, or they'll remember them for their trip. And then, as we're short on time today, I just really wanted to move on to something that comes in line with the disposal. And I think even when we have to use single use, and it might pain us to use single use, we want to at least dispose of it properly and feel that it's it is going to be recycled, it is going to the right place. And I think there's really an opportunity to make these messages consistent. So if you look at the bottom 3 pictures on this slide, for instance, every single colour represents a different type of waste. Now, if you live in Spain and you're in the third airport along in the bottom there, you've probably put your plastic in the aluminium bin before you've realised that, because everything yellow in Spain is plastic. So I think you can't always get customers to recycle right, even when we are consistent, but I think consistency would be a good start. And then having staff in the airport obviously lead by example. And I think it's unrealistic that we can be free from single use while we travel. So this is where we really are looking for suppliers of products and packaging to be consistent, honest, transparent, to help us understand what we should do with those products when we've finished with them, especially if the destination isn't supported by an infrastructure that can deal with the waste that is created. And there's some great initiatives you can see that I found and that are on the screen and that you can download from our website. We've got a little resource library there, but they're really a fascinating read. And there's certainly a lot going on to address this issue, which is great. And from us, yes, that's our very quick whistle-stop tour of our insight. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Some really interesting, a lot of information there to digest. I think one of my first questions, I guess, is, or an observation really, there's always a balance to be struck between investing in sustainable solutions and the relative return for businesses. Obviously, cost has been spoken about this week. When it comes to advertising solutions to consumers, does there need to be better pricing of products relative to the environmental impacts? And how is that achievable? How do we achieve that in shops? Is there some strategy perhaps that can be adopted? It's a tough one really to answer, I guess.
I think Peter's research shows that people they're willing to pay the extra that it takes, and I think in some ways we don't account for the cost of that plastic cup or of that plastic straw. It's not accounted for. If it was, and we were able to take that true cost in of having to deal with it as litter as well, then perhaps the real cost, the true cost of it, that would automatically just then play towards having the sustainable options being more affordable, if you like. Certainly, I don't know how on earth that could be achieved. That's definitely not our area of expertise, but I think, yeah, it's great to see that people would pay more, but I think they really, in the airport situation anywhere, say it's not necessarily having to pay more or pay less or making it financially attractive. It's just having the possibility to do it in the time that you've got, in the time frame that you've got. So, I spent, like I say, 20 minutes in Mallorca looking for that dispenser because I was determined to find it. How many people are willing to or can even do that in the situation that they're in? So at that point, you want a bottle of water, you're just going to choose one probably that's the easiest, the easiest and quickest available to you, not necessarily worrying about the price or the impact of that. So yeah, I wouldn't say at Travel Without Plastic we've got the answer to the pricing strategy, but perhaps some of the others may have some insight there to share.
Yeah, perhaps.
I was just going to say on the pricing aspect, Peter's data was showing that 66% will be willing to pay more, but that's the global figure. Peter, I don't know if you've got the insights to hand, but obviously I'm sure you can make them available. That figure would obviously vary significantly from airport to airport, depending on the profile of the passenger, the level of education, and obviously the income level. For airports that have a high percentage of not low cost, because low cost doesn't mean necessarily low income, but a lot of business travelers are using low cost carriers, but an airport with a high percentage of travelers with low income would you wouldn't have that same percentage in terms of willingness to pay more, I would imagine. Huh?
No, there are of course differences, but I think it's maybe not always a question of the actual amount. It's also a question of showing that there's some initiatives behind. Like in Switzerland, one of the leading domestic retailers, they recently abandoned all single-use plastic cutlery from everything they sell, and you have to pay like around €1 to buy it, and then it's like wooden, recyclable wood, and it's just a little gesture, and it's not a big financial thing, but it just shows they're paying attention to it. So it means like hundreds of thousands of less single-use plastic, and people don't mind paying €1 more for it, and it shows that they're doing something, they're taking care of it, and people like it. It has a positive impact on the perception of this the retailer. And that's what we also think, it doesn't have to be a lot of money, just a little bit, just to show the people, do I really need this single-use cutlery, or can I find another solution? It's just to make people think, make them aware of it. And even if there's small amounts, and people are, like we saw, are basically willing to pay a bit more for it. Not everywhere, not everybody. There are always ignorant around the world that it's always going to stay like this. But the more people we can motivate, and the more people that share with others, it will have a positive impact. And again, the amount doesn't really matter as long as it's reasonable.
And your research, Peter, you talked about one of the top reasons for people not wanting to look for or to purchase sustainable brands is because they cannot distinguish between what is sustainable and what is not sustainable. And Joe, through the GTPI, the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative, I think you mentioned you were working on, or you're aware of some of the promotion campaigns there, talking to brands about how to communicate that effectively. That's been a recurring theme throughout this week is the importance of communicating clearly the sustainable values of the brands to the consumers. Can you just tell us a bit about, and I think you've got a video you can show us as well about that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, there's so much out there today. And like Jessica said, there is a lot of greenwash, and that confuses people. It makes it very difficult, and people make a choice that they honestly believe is right, and they're gutted when it isn't. They're really upset to find out that actually this is even worse now than what I thought, what I was doing before, because people really do want to make that, make the right choice. So I think it is really important that we need to find some consistency around labeling, around making that easy for people to identify, particularly in travel, because you're going to, most of us, we're traveling hundreds, maybe thousands of miles to different places where, for all intents and purposes, the packaging, the waste infrastructure is nothing like at home. And so how on earth can you take everything that you know as a good citizen back in your own country and then replicate that if it's not made easy for us to do it? So I know that's a very big call to action to create consistent labeling, but that's what we quite liked about one of the initiatives from the One Planet Network and from the consumer agency that they work with to do that. And it's really calling for that, for collaboration at a global scale, to make it easier for people to be able to make those choices, and for brands to adopt that wherever they can. So yeah, it might be pretty interesting to look through that short video to see how that could work in practice.
You're probably used to this scene. There is your product, and so many others. There are also so many factors which can make consumers choose one product instead of yours. In the past few years, consumers are adding one more factor to this list: the sustainability attributes of products. Products with sustainable attributes can really attract the attention of consumers and help them make a positive impact, but only if these attributes are properly communicated. Meet 10 principles to communicate how sustainable your product is. The principles are derived from the guidelines for providing product sustainability information. The publication is an output of the Consumer Information Program of the One Planet Network. It's available on the Product Sustainability Information Hub.
So Joe, do you want to just talk us through that video?
Yeah, so there's actually a slightly longer version of it, which is just about 5 minutes, which was too long for us to play today, that goes into more detail. But it really it's showing that there are 5 fundamental principles, let's say, where the call to action is for suppliers of products and packaging to look at how they can consolidate that message for the consumer. And then there are 5 more kind of wish lists or nice to have or best practices that could be adopted. So it's really out there to look to engage collaboratively, I guess, so that we can do this on a global scale and that we can help people to make those choices, and that they're real choices, that somebody isn't going to make a purchase and then regret it, and that doesn't work very well for that brand either. I think we've really got to do our best to be as transparent as we possibly can, give people the information they need to make an informed choice, and then let them go from there. So that the whole booklet We loved it, so we made it available from, say, the little research library that we have on the Travel Without Plastic website, so it's really easy to find. Sometimes they're quite difficult to find. And it's definitely worth reading if you're in this space. There's a lot of good ideas in there and a lot of opportunities to collaborate through the One Planet Network, which put that together.
Luke, before we move to Jessica, I just wanted to ask, put Joe's point about the consistency of labelling to Beatrice, and get Molton Brown's perspective on how you communicate the sustainable attributes of your products or packaging in the travel retail sector, where you've got obviously, you know, the international environment. How do you get across that challenge?
Well, where we have our shop floor assistants, that's obviously the easiest way to communicate, because they can explain that. Then when it is in a physical environment and you only rely on the labeling of the product, that's when it becomes more challenging, obviously. So what we are considering, not doing now, but considering for the future, is to introduce some QR codes on the back of our packs that would link to our website, where the consumers would have access to the information they want related to the pack and the formula. But it's true that having the information here and now instantly on the pack is a big challenge. And you were talking about recycling. Actually, the challenge there is that not all the recycling streams are the same across countries. So that makes it even more complicated, which is why at Molton Brown, where we really focus a lot of our efforts is on reducing our amount of plastic, on replacing the amount of plastic with recycled PET, because that we can control. What we can't control is whether consumers are going to recycle. And in parallel to that, we are offering some refill solutions where our bottle is made in glass and not plastic. So I really think fundamentally the important thing is really to reduce virgin plastic, to replace virgin plastic with recycled plastic. And then recycle is the last resort, because overall, I think within the beauty industry, maybe 10% of the plastic is recycled. So that's why it is for the brands, it's for the manufacturers to address and tackle the problem from the outset, from the design phase.
I think just to add to that before you move on, but some of the work that we do with the hotels, because we know that, you know, once people purchase the product in your store, they're taking it away. You can't be responsible for how they dispose of it. And when they travel, that's the issue. They may know how to dispose of it in their home, where they're familiar with the waste infrastructure. So we do ask hotels we work with to look at how do you make it easy for people to know what to do with their waste. So if that product runs out while they're in your hotel, or they consume something in the destination, have something in the hotel room, have something on the television in the room, have something somewhere that helps them to be able to dispose responsibly as well, because they're in a place that they don't know 9 times out of 10. So, you know, you're quite right. You need to look at the design and how you make your products better in that way. And I think it's brilliant to give them information about what's in the products and maybe do that on displays so that you've got that immediate option. But at the same time, you know, everybody in the chain needs to take some responsibility for giving the consumers the information that they need. And that's, I say, that's where we kind of try to bring the hotels on board and say, help them when they're staying with you.
Okay, I think at this point we'll move to Jessica. Jessica, would you like to share some of your insights from the Plant-Based Products Council?
All right, can you see my slide? I can't see you all
no.
now. What was that?
Not yet, no.
No? you see them now?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Well, thanks for having me. Like I said, having worked for ACI for a few years back in the 2000s, it feels kind of like I've come full circle here. So, and sort of now as an interested observer, just seeing how the different aspects of the sustainability discussion in travel have kind of progressed and evolved. You know, thinking about, for example, ACI's carbon accreditation program, which was just getting launched when I was at ACI, and how that's really grown, all the sort of interest in growth in sustainable aviation fuels. And now I think the discussion that you all are having this week and really thinking carefully about the products and materials that the traveler interacts with, from shampoo in the hotel to the box that their to-go sandwich is in. And so to try to understand from a sustainability standpoint, what's on their mind and what motivates them, and how do you communicate when you have made a conscious choice to provide them with a more sustainable product, you know, how do you communicate that to the traveler? So first, I just want to introduce the organization that I work for, the Plant-Based Products Council. So we're a relatively new trade association, like I said, just over 2 years old, based in the US. And we represent really a broad range of companies that are focused on supporting the shift toward a more circular economy through greater adoption of products and materials that are made from renewable plant-based inputs. So many of the products that we use every day can be made from plants. So everything from cleaning products to personal care products, single-use items like food serviceware and medical supplies, even to more durable goods like textiles and plastics, including things like car parts and plane parts. And there's really a great diversity too in the feedstocks that can be used to make these products. So everything from more what we call commodity crops like corn and soy to things like hemp and algae, and even agricultural residue that might otherwise be considered a waste product.
Jessica, could you just put your screen in presentation mode so we use it just to see the detail on the slide? That's great. Thank you.
You can see it in presentation mode now?
You click on that.
Is it in presentation? What?
No, you're not in presentation mode yet, no. That one, yeah.
Is it in presentation mode?
No, it's not coming up yet. You're on the button now. Good.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, it's okay. We've popped in on them. Don't worry. It's fine. It's all good. We've zoomed in.
All right, can you see it?
Yeah, it's okay.
It's just not in presentation mode. Yeah.
No, it's okay. It's we've zoomed in. We've been able to zoom in on the slide, so that's all good.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not sure why I can see it both ways and it won't change to me. Okay. All right. So as a relatively new organization, we wanted to get a better understanding of U.S. consumer knowledge and sentiment about plant-based products. So we launched a consumer research program last year. It's going to serve as a baseline really going forward. So we'll be doing the research annually. So we'll be looking at some data really year over year to kind of track trends. And then, of course, sort of modifying along the edges to ask about issues or questions that are really relevant and timely that particular year. We're actually just getting our 2020 research underway right now. And so last year's data was gathered through an online survey in June. And that was just a polling of a nationally representative sample of 1,000 people in the US. So what that data told us is that there's general receptivity to plant-based products, with over half of consumers indicating they view plant-based products very or extremely favorable, almost 60% being very or extremely interested in plant-based products. So we thought that was good news. And when we asked them about their likelihood of purchasing plant-based products, we had similar positive feedback, though I would say more at 54% were very or extremely likely to themselves purchase plant-based products than they were to recommend to someone else, and that was more like 49%. I think the real issue there that you'll see in a minute with recommending to someone else relates to familiarity with the products. So based on our data, we think there's a pretty significant potential market for plant-based products. It's kind of US focused. But the issue is that there's just general confusion. So when we asked respondents what kind of products they think of when they see plant-based products, or see that word, that term, they think of food and paper. So honestly, this doesn't surprise me. I think the sort of plant-based food space has kind of cornered the market on that term. And I know, at least personally, when I told friends or colleagues that I'm working for the Plant-Based Products Council, they all say, that sounds cool. Have you tried the Impossible Burger? And I tell them, yes, I have, but that's, but do you know about all the other things that can be made from plants? And I do think, at least here in the US, and it sounds like that may be sort of more broad too, that the shift in to retail and restaurant to more takeout and delivery and things being delivered to our house, and a significant amount of plastic and packaging that's been kind of brought into our home as a result of the COVID pandemic has made people, I think, more conscious of how much waste is generated with those materials and what can be done to address it. But even last summer, clothing and various types of packaging were plant-based products that people were at least somewhat familiar with. But overall, only about 1 in 5 consumers were familiar with plant-based products. And so that explains that statistic on why they were less likely to recommend them to others. So they're interested from their limited knowledge. They have overall positive views, but I think there's really a lot of education to be done. And one more data point that I wanted to share, this was from some older research we did in 2019 that was focused specifically on millennials and focused specifically on packaging or on plastics. And when we asked them what traditional plastic was made out of, almost a quarter said plastic root, which of course is not a real thing. And another 20% just weren't even able to answer the question, they didn't know. So what does that tell us? I think for one, there's education to be done. People are really interested in sustainability and factoring sustainability into their purchasing decisions, but I think they often don't know what that means. And so providing very clear information about a product or a service about how it's more sustainable and what you're comparing it to as well, I think is really important. And of course, for my organization, it means educating people about the many benefits of plant-based products in general. But I think it also tells us that we have an opportunity, which is really to fill that knowledge gap with credible information. So there's always going to be someone, or sometimes many someones, that want to stick with the status quo, and they may challenge, new ways of doing things, new products, and raise questions. And I know I hear a lot of, whatabouts type of statements. And I could probably spend a whole nother presentation kind of talking about the various misconceptions about plant-based products. So we'll save that for another time. But I think filling that knowledge gap with facts and helping people understand that the status quo isn't working clearly and change is needed. And so even if it's just incremental change that we're making, that it is making a difference, and it's all based on this goal of continuous improvement. So there's 2 things that I want you to take away from my talk here. I think it's transparency and collaboration. I think being as transparent as possible on content and on the positive impacts that a product is making, especially if we can do that in a measurable way. And all of this really with the interest of avoiding greenwashing. I think one important aspect to us, at least for plant-based products, is ensuring that they're part of the circular bioeconomy. And that includes thinking through the end of life of these products. I know one of the challenges we face is some plant-based products are compostable, and I know at least here in the US, there's very little composting infrastructure, something we're working on. And so the challenge is when you're calling something compostable, but it's just going to a landfill, that really doesn't give consumers a lot of confidence. And from a collaboration standpoint, I think, of course, the interconnectedness of this industry, it's an opportunity, and it's critical. So, if an airline, for example, wanted to move to compostable trays or cups for its service items, which is actually a really great opportunity for getting food waste to compost as well, where you're in a situation where you have close control over the waste, same as like a hotel or restaurant, there's more closed loop systems. it's important to be able to get those items to a composter at the end of the day. And so those items need to be able to come off the airplane at an airport where they have a place for those materials to go both on the airport and off the airport, and a hauler to take them away. So success really is going to be, better with collaboration. And I also just want to mention there are many third-party labels. It's, I think there are questions about what people trust and what they have knowledge of. There are a lot of labels that can help address some of these concerns. So something to think about. And just my last slide, I just want to sort of highlight a few examples of opportunities to incorporate plant-based products into travel. But I'll stop there and look forward to some discussion.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, I guess just a simple question, kind of what are you actively doing at the moment to increase awareness of plant-based products and packaging in a way that's useful for the travel retail or travel environment? Are you working with any partners in particular at the moment to kind of raise that awareness? Obviously, you put your ACI hat on, former ACI hat on as well, and maybe speak about some of the challenges for airports, if you can, in increasing that awareness.
Yeah, so I would say with the travel industry, there's not much that we're doing right now. Our focus right now is sort of US focused from a policy perspective. I mentioned the work we're trying to do with regards to composting infrastructure, all of these things trying to address that sort of that greenwashing component of the consumer. There's a consumer perception, but there's also a brand perception, right? So if a brand says, well, I'm interested in moving to compostable materials, like that sounds great, but they know at the end of the day, there's nowhere for that to go. I think 80% of people in the US don't have access to food scrap composting. They're not going to have access to, a composter that's going to take, to be important, an important point, when we say compostable, it usually means it has to go to a commercial composter. You can't put it in your backyard kind of composting bin. So to be able to have that infrastructure so that, we are moving toward being able to close the loop for products like that. So that's one of the things we're working on, along with trying to address this sort of issue of, these sometimes more nascent products. I mean, there's a lot of innovation happening in the plant-based product space. There's a lot of products out there, but there's also a lot of innovation and newer products. And how do we bring those products to market better when they're competing with, a traditional plastic product that's had 120 years to optimize for its use and its market, and people are familiar with it and they know it and they're comfortable with it. And how do we create a more level playing field from a cost standpoint with incentives or things like, tax incentives or things like that can help make these products more equitable from a cost standpoint, so that doesn't become as much of a factor to a company that is interested in moving to a more, sustainable material. That the cost is, that's one of many factors, of course, a company has to think about that. But we don't want that to be the overriding factor.
Jessica, you rightly point on the fact that brands are investing a lot into sustainable materials. Just take all the restaurants that we see in airports and downtown. They're all investing in more expensive biodegradable compostable solutions for cups and lids. Joe highlighted the lack of consistency in terms of how to dispose of these in airports, but here downtown in a very forward-thinking market like Australia, where there is a big trend for eco-friendly consumption, everybody's being served up their coffee in biodegradable and compostables, but no coffee shop is providing, bar one that I've seen, the infrastructure to compost that. So you're saying that a percentage of Americans and a high percentage of Americans don't have access to it, but the problem is that none of the coffee shops or the councils are providing that infrastructure so you can dispose of it. And isn't the onus on, to come back to our industry, councils should be doing the job, but shouldn't airports also be putting in that infrastructure to have all the various sorting bins for compostables?
Right. No, that's critical. I mean, that's critical all along the path. But if there is no composting infrastructure in the community where that airport's located, they're collecting it and probably putting it in the landfill anyway. And that's not what we want. And so, you need that composting infrastructure in the community for the airport to have a place to send it. And so it's, making that connection all along the way. But I mean, that's I mean, that's a point too, is even if there's composting in the community and people have these compostable materials, people don't know what compostable means. People don't know what biodegradable means. And that's a challenge too. People think that means, oh, I just put it in the landfill and it's going to break down. And that's not what it means. Like if something's certified compostable, it has to be subject to very certain conditions for it to break down. It can break down, but if it's going to the landfill, it's just like any other plastic. So there's a lot of education to be done to help people even understand what these various terms mean. That's something that we're trying to work on as well.
Joe's nodding her head there vigorously.
I think it's just one of those things, isn't it, that private business is always going to innovate faster than policy, and for those that need to create the infrastructure, it's like turning a cruise ship. It's going to take so much longer. So the innovation privately has gone so far ahead, and somehow we kind of need to get them to meet in the middle, because there is a lot of great innovation out there. And I think if we can get to that complementary point, specifically, like you say, so that airports can dispose of the waste that's collected in them, and there's also the thing in with certain types of waste have to be treated differently, don't they? There's category A hazardous waste a lot of the time. If anything's had food waste, already kind of linked to the packaging, doesn't matter what it's made of, it's going to incineration, whether you like it or not. So that there's a lot to do still. And I think that's the issue, that the private sector will always be too many steps ahead, and the public sector is trying to catch up with the infrastructure.
Is it a good point to bring in Beatrice here into the discussion, Luke? And I think one of the questions is we've been talking about from Peter's presentation is, the willingness of consumers to spend more. We discussed it earlier. From your perspective, do you think is there much price elasticity when it comes to marketing a product or a brand's sustainable values, do you think?
I do think so. I think the way the question needs to be asked is really two things. First, coming up with sustainability solutions comes at a cost, but it's about staying relevant with the consumer, as we've just seen. So it's about staying relevant now for the long run. So it's really not a short-term game. That's the first thing. But I think the real question to ask is, what value are we bringing to the consumer to make their lifestyle sustainable? And I think if we can demonstrate that clearly to them, either it is a super convenient way, or it is a very compelling, so compelling that you can't not buy into it to live a more sustainable lifestyle. It's about demonstrating the value you are giving to the consumer. And we do see, for example, we've just launched our new hand glass bottle. It's shifting the idea of what is the packaging. The packaging is not something that you dispose of. The packaging is something you invest in, that you keep, and then you can buy the refill. And actually what our consumers are telling us, they are thanking us for doing that, because they are saying, well, it's good for the planet, and we are also making some savings because it's less expensive to buy into the refill. So I think provided the value we are bringing is tangible and perceived by the consumer, then the consumer is willing to pay the price. They are saying they are ready to pay more, but they need to see the value, and the value needs to be there.
Beatrice, how are you, I guess, scaling up how you incentivize consumers to invest their time and money in sustainable products? I know you mentioned refill pouches there, and I know you've introduced that for your hand washes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Do you have plans to introduce refill mechanisms for your other products, the fragrances, indeed incentivizing, as I mentioned, through an added discount of purchases, the next purchase they make across some of your other categories? Can you maybe touch on that a bit?
So we've started with our hand wash category because it's a huge category for us. The reason for doing that is for us really to make a meaningful impact, to have a proper material impact. So it's not about greenwashing, it's about doing the right thing and having a meaningful impact. So that's where we are starting. But by 2023, our aim, our ambition is to have refill options across our core categories. So hand, body wash in particular. So we are working on that. It is not easy to develop a bottle for life, so to speak, for the body wash, but we are working on it. Then for our fragrances, they are already refillable. We've just launched our fragrances a year ago. By design, they are refillable. So if you go in our stores and bring back your packaging, it can be refilled in some of our stores. Because it is such a new way of doing it, it's a completely pioneering way to do it. We are still in testing phase because it's not so easy, but we are offering it. So I think this demonstrates how serious we are about offering refillable solutions. We are also on the Loop platform, which is a refill shopping platform, because we feel it's about giving options to the consumers as to how they can live this sustainable lifestyle. To your point, when they come for a refill, they make a saving. So in the case of the hand wash, when they buy a refill with us, they already make a saving. So it's much cheaper to buy a refill than it is to buy 2 hand washes. So yeah.
A question from the audience, Beatrice, on that topic of refills that you mentioned. Does Molton Brown see any challenges with the implementation of the refill service in the airport retail environment?
In the airport environment, especially, we would be open to trial that to see whether there is interest from the consumer. Obviously, because it is a large refill. Sorry, because it is a large refill, this would not be a possibility, I don't think.
We started a little bit late due to technical issues, and so we are running a little bit over time, but we'll carry on because we know, Bits, you had some consumer insights you think prepared from the beauty category specifically that you put together. Do you want to share with us, with the audience, some of those insights?
Yes, sure. What we learned from focus groups, because as I was saying before, in order to define our strategy, to define our commitments for the midterm, for the long term, we've worked with Futera, sustainability agency, and we've defined where we had to put our efforts to make the maximum impact. And then we've done focus groups with younger age group, with older age groups, some loyals, some non-loyals, to share what our commitments were. And what was quite clear is the ones that resonated most with them are the commitments where they can make a difference, where they can make an impact. So for example, they can choose to buy into our 100% vegan formulas. So they are interested in that. They can choose to buy a refill and reduce their plastic usage by 80%. So they can make a difference. But when we shared with them that we will be net carbon neutral by 2021, it is interesting, but it's less relevant for them. If we tell them our bottles now are made of 50% recycled PET, this is a big, for us, it is a big commitment. It is a cost. It is at the moment hard to source because there is a lot of demand. So their question is, well, why is it not 100% recycled PET? So, you have to explain why. You still need to bring some virgin plastic because the more you recycle, the less the quality of plastic. So anything which needs explanation, which is not instantly understandable, which they cannot impact, will be less relevant to them. Even if, from our perspective, it has a big material impact.
That's a really interesting point, because we've talked so much about consumer communication throughout the week, but not about the actual message in itself and what needs to be communicated. Joe gave a really good example through the video about how to communicate it, but what to communicate in particular is really valid there. And you're saying it has to be something that really touches the individual themselves.
Yeah, it has to be something that by buying into that, they are themselves going to make a positive impact, to make a difference. And the fact that we have responsible sourcing, are looking for zero landfill waste by 2025. For them, it's far out. So it has to be now, and it can't be too far away. So it has to be about them making a difference. It has to be now, and it has to be very strong and with no need to explain. At least when you are, at the point of sale or when you are on the floor. Obviously, there are other platforms where you can explain way more and go into the detail. So that's where we would go, for example, in our website, or we can explain way more. But when it is about the point of purchase, yeah, it has to be very, 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 very specific. And also, something that we really understood more by taking part in the sustainability roundtables with Walpole, the British luxury body. What we all discussed about as British luxury brands is, you need to know your purpose, know what you aim for and why, and be very simple about it. And also understanding the audiences, understand how much they know about sustainability, what they want to hear about. Because unless you do that, you speak to yourself. So in a different format, we landed to the same conclusions. It is about relevance. And it is about the consumer making an impact, perceiving that they can make an impact. And then they perceive the value. And then you can price it accordingly.
It'd be interesting to throw that to the other panelists, Joe, Jessica, and Peter. Do you have a similar experience?
I think it's that's what we find. People really want to know, what benefit is it to me? And that doesn't always mean that they just want it to be a selfish benefit. I think what Beatrice has picked up on is really right, that if you want to support brands that you think help you support your own identity of who you are, who you want to be ethically. And I think when it's easy to distinguish that and people can make that choice, and that also creates very loyal customers. I would very much imagine, but I know I'm like that. When I find something that I think, oh, this is brilliant, it's I try to stick to a vegan diet and do as much as I can. When I find something that offers me a vegan diet without single-use plastic packaging, that's it, customer for life, because that's helping me to really do what I want to do. And it's difficult to tick all of those boxes. But I do think people, really need to understand the benefits to them. It needs to resonate with them personally, although I'm sure it's still important to get the wider message out there. The other CSR messages that you were talking about, because other people need to see that, investors need to see it, corporates need to see it, people that read your CSR report need to see it, but the customers need a totally different set of messaging, and they need it to resonate with them now when they're going to buy it. And when they've got so many other things to choose from, you need to capture their attention and they keep going over to you. And I think that's what you need to do as brands, isn't it? And find your USP in that place.
Jessica, what's your experience there?
Yeah, I think one other, I agree with that. I think one other sort of detail from some of our research we found is like, it's not only about sort of connecting to the individual and them feeling like the purchase I'm making is having an impact, but also that like I'm part of a broader movement, that it's not just me, that it's everyone's doing it. It's like we're all working together to try to make this positive impact. So making it part of a broader sort of campaign, a broader sort of movement, that I think helps motivate people too.
And Peter, what about in the consumer insights? Do you see that kind of finding coming out?
Yeah, I think that it's true that the more relevant it is, the more interesting and appealing it is. But I think companies also have to be consistent, like also in things they do themselves, and also in the sustainability pitches I saw. I think the most successful ones are who are really consistent. You have a whole ecosystem where the actual end user can contribute by their behavior, but also themselves by using certain farmers, using supporting techniques, educating their suppliers. So it has to be a complete story, and I think consumers are also a bit skeptical that they are not the marketing gags or some kind of games, just because it will sell more or add some label or some stamps on it. So they really have to be trustworthy and believable. So it has to be a whole concept, and the whole philosophy of our company has to support this sustainability. And consumers are getting more and more educated and more intelligent in this regard, and they know more. So it's very, very important to be very consistent throughout the whole company organization. But again, it becomes most appealing, of course, when it's relevant. I can only confirm that what I've heard from the other speakers today, that's absolutely true. And that's also how our consumers act. But again, they inform themselves quite well nowadays.
I think it's worth mentioning at this point that we've had the sustainability pitch program throughout this week, that we've shown the trailblazers and the heroes, and later this year we've got the Travel Retail Awards. And many of the viewers will know this, but for those who don't, the Travel Retail Awards is a program we run in partnership with Mindset, where brands, airports, retailers can submit their entries, best product for across all categories, to a panel of, I think it's about 5,000 consumers, isn't it, Peter? 5,000 consumers from across the world, judging the product submissions, the best airport retail, etc., best cruise retail, best F&B. And last year we launched the best green initiative at an airport. This year, the green award is split into two categories. It's the best sustainable supplier award, where brands can submit to it. So we want to see all of you brands watching, including you, Beatrice, submit your sustainable supplier award submission to the award. And we've got the best sustainable airport, cruise and airline retail award as well. And what I think is going to be interesting is that for all the companies who submitted their pitch proposal into the sustainability pitch program this week, that's been judged by a panel of, including Peter, senior executives from airports and retailers, from ETRC, from the Plastic Bank. So corporate, it's kind of a B2B, and I think it was Joe's just mentioning, the difference, or Beatrice was mentioning the difference between what the consumers are going to be interested in and what the corporate's going to be interested in. And I think the message is going to be quite different, or the way in which the consumer is going to embrace the pitch proposal, the Travel Retail Awards proposals, they're going to be sensitive to those other aspects. So I think it's going to be interesting to see companies who've submitted to the pitch program with the global approach to zero waste and the carbon emissions and so on. That's great. It's fantastic, and it's really hit home with the corporate judges, the B2B judges. But when it comes to the consumer awards, Peter, what do you think? I think the message is going to have to be far more geared to how the sustainable investments touch the consumer. Is that right?
Yes, I absolutely agree. And that's also what we have learned in the previous research we've done regarding this matter, that it really has to touch the consumer. They have to feel how they can contribute, how they feel it. And yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what the consumers feel. And I think that's most important, because they have a direct impact because of their behavior.
So a message out there to everybody watching: you've got until the 23rd of May to submit your entry to the Travel Retail Awards 2021, the 4th edition, and we'll be announcing the winners in Cannes, hopefully, if we all meet there. If not, it'll be a virtual ceremony like last year. But we hope to all meet in Cannes. And so do submit your entries, both for product categories, but also those sustainability awards as well. I think, Luke, we're more or less out of time now, I think. So it's probably best if we ask our panelists to give some concluding remarks. What do you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we do so, I'd just like to ask Peter a quick question regarding the future. Obviously, that research touched on the spending habits as they are at the moment, and compared to pre-COVID, obviously 35%, that statistic of international travellers are purchasing more sustainable and local environmentally friendly products compared to pre-COVID. We know that despite the strangulation of passenger traffic at the moment, spend per head is up at many locations. That's obviously great news for the retailers, many of which will be watching this. But when that higher spend per pax settles down, which it is likely it will, are we expecting people to return to their old buying habits, or do we believe that they will start to invest more in sustainable products? What is your, I guess, indication at this point, Peter, on that?
Well, the research we have conducted clearly shows that the majority of those who have an increased interest or sensitivity towards sustainability will keep it up. It's our feeling is that around 80% of those have changed their minds, and will also, those who actually say that out of 35%, they think that they will also, it's a long term, they gain interest, they're starting to educate themselves, they're learning more about it, informing themselves, they will remain the same, whereas maybe around 20% of those will go back to their normal behavior. But so we still think that the absolute majority will keep this up, and I think it's also like a snowball effect. Like people talk about it, there are more activities around it, more companies do things, airports are more active, advertising campaigns include these messages. So I think it's a snowball effect that has started and will continue rolling. And I'm really quite positive about that. This will remain for the majority of the travelers as an important aspect.
An overriding positive message for future investment in sustainable products. I want to get the other panelists' opinion on this and kind of where their immediate priorities lie in trying to keep this momentum going. Perhaps, Joe, we can start with yourself.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, really, we just want to do as much as we can to use our networks to look at collaboration. How do we help in the part that we play, which I say isn't predominantly at airports at all, but we're at the other end of, the final end of the journey, if you like, working with hotels and accommodation providers, and that we need to be able to do our best to help people make those disposal decisions. But from another perspective, we also work with procurement teams in hotels to help them identify how they can make the best purchasing decisions. So I think once there's really some clarity on that consistency and help people to make the decisions that are right for them in the destination they're in, with their customer demographic and the infrastructure they've got, then I think they're going to start to at least question, put questions into their contracts with suppliers and And hopefully we just all start to move together in that direction. So from our part, it's really just to continue with that and to help people keep up to date with any new findings, any new research that come out that could be helpful to them in order to achieve that goal.
Thanks, Jo. Jessica, I'd like to give you the platform just to share some final thoughts really on today and really Plant-Based Product Council's immediate priorities moving forward.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's been great being back in a discussion with the travel industry from my days in aviation. But I think seeing things, as I said, kind of come full circle from a sustainability standpoint, and coming from a place where, you know, seeing how things have evolved so much, reflecting on my days at ACI, where I had an airport director call me one day and say, why are we even talking about climate change? To kind of where things have evolved, and hundreds of airports now being, you know, carbon accredited, and just like how things have shifted so much, and the industry really being leaders in, you know, it's what consumers want, but like showing that we're being reflective of that as an industry, I think is really important. I guess from our standpoint, it's really, you know, continuing to understand what people know or don't know about plant-based products, and helping to raise the level of knowledge and the benefits, but also making sure we're not doing it in a way that's greenwashing, that we're really helping to ensure that the infrastructure and the understanding of terminology and all of those things are being addressed, so that there's confidence that we are actually moving toward, you know, more sustainable products in this space.
Thanks, Jessica. Beatrice, a few words from you, if you can.
Yeah, just to say that, yeah, at Molton Brown, we really believe that luxury and sustainability should work hand in hand, and we are determined to come up with the solutions of tomorrow. I think it's really nice to hear from all of the panelists, you know, innovation, innovation, innovation. It's a huge challenge. It's complex, but the more constraints, the more creative we can be and come up with solutions. Consumers are craving for it. We see the impact we are making with some of our initiatives, you know, the refill pouch, the hand glass bottles, they are wanting that. And even we have just launched in our hotel channel, you were talking about it, Jo, we have a new signature dispenser that we are launching in hotel, which removes entirely the need to have some hotel amenities. So really, it is about offering the options to our partners. It's about offering the options and making it so compelling that they want to have it. So again, it is a story of partnership and collaboration to create greater good and make a positive impact. So in the end, it's all about creating value and tangible value, tangible experience.
Thanks very much, Beatrice. We are out of time, unfortunately. I'm sure we could go on for another hour or so. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for their informed and very insightful commentary and a great debate. You know, plenty more to cover, and I'm sure that we'll continue that dialogue, certainly at the next Travel Retail Sustainability Week, but obviously before, we want to keep up these sort of sessions and have them on a more regular basis, so please keep in touch with us. Before I hand over to Michael, I'd just like to say a few closing words, if that's okay, Michael, and then I'll hand you back. So obviously we are at the end of our panel session series for Travel Retail Sustainability Week. We aren't finished yet. As Michael mentions, we've got the earthday.org live stream taking place. I'm not sure if it's already started, Michael. I believe it was 6 o'clock, but it might be following this. But
Straight after this.
Straight after this, okay. So we urge you to stay on the platform and really, you know, keep watching, keep engaging, keep the conversation going. Just a bit of background: we collaborated with earthday.org to bring you this special occasion, and we encourage you to soak up some of these celebrations, and, you know, as we join in solidarity to demonstrate our support for environmental protection. globally. Tomorrow, just a quick word on the session there. We've got a not to be missed finale taking place at 11:30 a.m. UK time, where we've got a closing keynote from KPMG's Anson Bailey, familiar, I'm sure, to many of you from his appearances on the travel retail speaking circuit, but indeed with our very own TR Connect webinar series. Anson will be revealing some KPMG insights on sustainability and discuss the key drivers around sustainable finance, how corporates need to rethink their supply chains in view of more socially aware consumers and investors. More information on the session tomorrow is available on trbusiness.com, but we urge all of you to join us for that. All that remains to say is thank you once again to all our premium partners for supporting this session, in particular Ariance International, Beam Suntory, Brown Forman, Coty, Molton Brown and Mondelez. Your support is really appreciated. It's integral to this week. And at this point, I think it's apt to hand back to Michael. Thank you so much to all the panelists once again, and thank you to all our viewers for watching this session. Michael, back to you.
Thanks, Luke. No, I think you said it all. I'm not going to delay anyone any further. Just thanks to all the panelists, thanks to all the sponsors of this session, as you just mentioned, and have a great rest of day, and see you tomorrow for the closing keynote, and enjoy the live Earth stream coming right now. Take care. Bye-bye.